right. It is 1:15 Eastern Time on November the 18th. Remember where you're at, boys and girls. Notre Dame is unanimous AP #1. All but 3 votes in the coaches poll #1. And, I mean, they got to be BCS #1 tonight, right?
I think there's no way that they're not. I don't see what the big deal is, though. Charlie Weiss had him at #2, so I don't think that this team's that much better than. I mean, do you think Kelly's better than Weiss, or?
Well, no.
Time will tell. I think time will tell.
I mean, Charlie's got 1 win at Kansas this year. So,
yeah.
And he is an offensive mastermind. So.
Absolutely. Well, I'll verify that just to be sure, but I believe the year after they played Ohio State, they were #2, but that was the beginning of the season. Being ranked #1 at the end of the season, slightly different, as we all know.
Yeah. So, well, all right, man. No notes for you. I've got a couple here, to be honest. I'm so hungover today. Being this hungover never felt so good, but I'm hurt, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think no matter how much anybody drank, I think everybody probably didn't expend a lot of emotion during the Notre Dame game, obviously. But if you happen to tune in and do some recreational viewing last night, as I assume any Irish faithful would, it was like, geez, which game do I watch? Do you watch the drama and suspense that was playing out with Oregon and Stanford, or do you just watch the glory that was Baylor beating Kansas State? Every time I flipped over the Kansas State game, they couldn't get anything going, and the score just kept getting wider.
Yeah. Baylor absolutely manhandled Kansas State. I think I tweeted out some of their stats, but it was I think they had 580 total yards.
Yeah.
340 rushing yards. They were averaging 7 yards a carry. 50 points. I mean, they just.
If you would have asked me watching this game, and truth be told, I hadn't researched Baylor that much. I just know that I knew that I wanted anybody that would possibly beat K-State to beat them. But the biggest thing with Baylor was, by the time I finally looked at their record, I realized that going into that game, they're 4-5.
Yeah.
And
they weren't even. They were under 500.
Right. So we have not spent a ton of time analyzing all these records and what this all means. But obviously, at this point, with Notre Dame, as they say, kind of being in the clubhouse at 11-0 here, it is time to start getting a little bit more nitpicky about these other teams. And Kansas State really exposed themselves, being #1. Having that mantle going into your game, and then it's not like you lost. It's not like what Texas A&M did to Alabama, which is a ranked team getting the better of another good team. That was a sub-500 team, absolutely having their way with you. That exposes you as a #1, and that's just something that can't happen. Would you be surprised if Alabama jumps them? I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I think Alabama would be #2. And, I mean, I think they were in the AP. And truth be told, I want to play Bama.
Yeah.
I want to play Bama in the title game. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Who's the most recognizable program in NCAA football for the last 5 years?
Right.
It's Alabama.
Well,
I want Bama, man.
Again, we deferred to the record. When the records are different, you defer to the record. When everybody goes back to having all things being equal in terms of the record, and you start to stack them up, and you look at who they lost to and how Alabama looks like the best team against Oregon and K-State. And before they lost to A&M, they still look like it. I'm most intrigued with Notre Dame playing Oregon simply because Stanford had the formula of the exact way that Notre Dame could potentially beat Oregon.
I said that.
You totally said it, and the stats bared it out. #1 rush defense. They were #1 in sacks.
#1 in sacks. Their third down conversion was tremendous. They had turnovers. I mean, not to toot the own horn, but if you've been listening to the podcast and or following, us on Twitter, you're basically looking at profits. I mean, you are seeing people tell you what's going to happen before it happens. It's pretty remarkable.
We have been, I feel like we haven't been dialed in. We dialed in on the Oklahoma game, and a lot of these things are sort of obvious. Like, Notre Dame's going to beat teams with defense. But Stanford epitomized what Notre Dame could do against Oregon, I thought.
No, they absolutely did.
I said
Stanford's got a great shot of beating them. One other thing I did say is that combined margin of victory between Boston College and Wake Forest would be at least 50 points. It was 53.
And you cleared it. So, that started to look good. And again, we talked all year. Notre Dame didn't have a lot of stylish type of wins. For all the boo birds out there, all the haters, there you go. And make no mistake about it. If you don't follow Notre Dame and you're listening to our podcast, welcome. We appreciate that. Notre Dame could have poured it on last night. They could have poured it on.
Now,
we saw seniors. We saw walk-on guys in the fourth.
Golson had more passing yards than Mariota. Than Colin Klein, than A.J. McCarron, then Aaron Murray, then, you know, you go down the whole list of the top 10. And basically the guy was done midway through the third quarter. Yeah. 346 yards, and they were airing it out.
Absolutely.
I mean, Goodman's catch was insane. 50 yards. I mean, they were just. Well, it was air raid.
Right, it was. It absolutely was. It was great to see some pigskin, you know, piercing the November sky in South Bend, because you really haven't seen it that much this year. What do you attribute that to? Let's go tactical for a bit. Is that about giving these guys some pub? Is that what Kelly's doing? Is that about showing different looks for whoever you might have to play down the road?
I think that's part of it, and I think they absolutely did not respect Wake Forest defense at all.
Yeah.
You know, and what's the one thing that they haven't shown this year? A deep threat, yeah? I mean, that's the one. If there's anything that Notre Dame has not done well this year, and there's several, but offensively,
it's consistently throwing the ball.
Never went deep. They never aired it out. Hey, if you're gonna play Wake Forest, that's your tune-up game before Southern Cal. You might as well let them go deep.
Right.
He threw and I'm almost and Golson threw a pick. It was a stupid throw off his back foot into the end zone. He was a little too confident.
Yeah, so it was definitely a heat check.
You know, but that was good for that to happen, because he can go back and recognize a mistake, and hey, you know, you can't do that.
Well, I thought one of the most telling moments of the game was the double jump ball to Eifert, which was the exact same play twice in a row, and they even ran it later.
Straight Charlie Weiss. Run it again.
It was straight Charlie Weiss, but I think Charlie Weiss, let's be honest, when Charlie Weiss was running, that's because he had only a few known quantity plays and known quantity players.
No, I'm not even saying it's because of the fade. I'm saying it's because Weiss knows the play that he wants to run, and he runs it, and if they don't execute it, he runs it again, and if they don't execute it, he runs it again.
But I think there's a difference between stubbornness and your own mental ego, which is probably what we saw with Weiss. And last night, when we saw that ball to Eifert, it was, look, it was a bad throw. We know how to do this, and we have no fear that this guy's going to make a play, being the Wake Forest quarterback. No, so it's like, that's when you see a team that had, and they did the other they ran a couple other plays one after another, and it just shows the confidence that they have in their play calling. I think it was a little different with Weiss, which was, well, once we get inside the 5, we don't have much that we can really do here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. One of the other things was great to see Sierra Wood just galloping down the field again. Eerily similar to Oklahoma. Not only the big run, not only him getting some positivity happening, but such a tone-setting run to just fly down the field.
And it was funny because last week we were like, maybe Sierra just doesn't try hard. I mean, maybe Riddick just gets all the carries because, you know, Kelly knows he's better. I don't know. I mean, Riddick had, I think, 38 yards rushing last night, or 20 yards rushing and 38 receiving. It wasn't remarkable, and you could argue that that's Riddick's final home game, just like probably was Sierra's. I mean, but you know, whatever.
But I think a lot of what we talked about, it wasn't necessarily to say that Sierra Wood wasn't trying. It was just that you could almost see steam coming out of Riddick's ears whenever he was running. So it just had a little bit of a different look to it. But we also had a little bit of a text conversation during the game, which was, you know, Sierra Wood is a very patient runner, and as an NFL scout, you look at that guy and it's like, he knows how to use linemen that are in front of him. A lot of the same type of stuff they talk about with Kean McDaniel, maybe his is a lack of skill that he has to lean on that. But Theo Riddick, you can say, hey, there's a brick wall right there. He'll just go run into it with his head down. Yeah. And that's good in a lot of ways, but Sierra Wood can wait, can move his way down the line, see some daylight, and then just take off. I mean, he did everything on that play tactically very correct. Well, and it set a great tone for him.
And it was a pitch. It was an option play.
Yeah.
That was the best part about it. Golson pitched.
Yeah.
So, you know, Atkinson's got some stuff to work on. I mean, Atkinson, you know, if there's a brick wall, Atkinson runs laterally all the way down to try to find the end of it to run around.
Yeah.
And he's got some growing to do. You know, it stinks that we're probably going to lose Riddick, and well, we know we're going to lose Riddick, most likely lose Wood, but, you know, I feel good about Kean McDaniel. You know, he's fine.
And Atkinson, too.
Amir Carlisle's going to be back. You got Will Mahone, who's, you know, he's a young kid.
Yeah, and even Atkinson, before just kind of writing him off, the guy has an amazing amount of speed. No. It's just the fact that we see this a lot with young running backs. You're not in high school anymore. You can't make 5 jukes on one run, and you can't switch the fields like you're Reggie Bush.
Unless you're Denard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you got to get back in the pocket to do so. But the thing is, Atkinson could be coached into being a very effective running back.
There's no doubt. We're definitely not writing him off. I mean, he's got to grow. All right, well, I mean, what else is there to say? It was an aerial assault. You know, it felt like you were in wherever. Libya, just getting shelled.
Yeah, well, there were passes flying all over. I think the other thing too was something we've echoed all year long, which was the best thing about Notre Dame going into any sort of bowl game, any sort of championship try or whatever, is that how do you plan for Notre Dame offensively? And what I don't mean is that they're going to wow you to the point. Like, you look at USC, you're worried about two guys, and one of them may or may not be hurt now.
Yeah.
You're worried about the QB, and you're worried about Lee at the receiver position, and probably the starting running back. But at Notre Dame, it's like, Robbie Toma is a sure-handed guy that you have to account for. Good. Look at Goodman. I mean, he has 5 catches, 3 of which are touchdowns, 2 of which are highlight reel, one-handed bomb type of touchdowns.
To keep drives going.
Exactly. I mean, everything that's happening is critical. T.J. Jones is turning into an amazing possession receiver. Eifert, they showed his highlights. He's just jumping for the ball. We know what Eifert is. You just have to. There's nobody that's quite next level, maybe, except for Eifert, as we've talked about in the running backs. But you cannot sleep on anybody on offense, which is a great thing to be.
Except for Koyak. I hope he's another guy that can get coached up, because man, oh man, that's a significant drop off from Eifert too.
Yeah, well, and it's going to be a significant drop off from Eifert to anybody. But yeah, when you start to look at the progression that has been Fasano, Carlson,
Fasano
Rudolph,
leaves, you got John Carlson. Carlson leaves, you got Rudolph. Rudolph leaves, you got Eifert. Eifert leaves.
Crickets,
You know, and Nicholas is big, and Nicholas, you know, he's caught a TD now this year. I have yet to see anything really promising out of Big
Well, it may be the end of just putting the tight end automatically in the first or second round of the NFL draft,
which is fine. We'll get the next guy in there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about USC. I did. These are the only notes I do have. But I was looking at USC's 4 losses again. Now it should be, you know, they said Matt Barkley's got separated shoulder, potentially won't play. I almost wish he would play. Listen to these. I mean, here's USC's 4 losses this year: Stanford, Arizona, Oregon, and UCLA. Listen to these stats: 2 interceptions against Stanford, 2 interceptions against Arizona, 2 interceptions against Oregon, 2 interceptions against UCLA. We're beginning to see a pattern here. 1 lost fumble against Stanford, 3 lost fumbles against Arizona, 1 lost fumble against Oregon, 1 lost fumble against UCLA. Now, those aren't all Barkley, but the point is, these guys are averaging 3.5 turnovers in their losses. I think that lines up pretty well for us.
Right. Well, and when you see the fumbles in addition to the interceptions, that makes you question a little bit more. Is this an offensive line, lacking thing that they have?
No, it's a complete lack of focus.
Right.
Their coach is a complete douche. Kiffin is confused. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. Barkley came back. I don't know why. You know, they started out number 1. I don't know what they felt to in the AP, if they're even still in it. We're about to push this team off a cliff, I hope.
Yeah, well, they were at the bottom. They were about, I mean,
they were 18
they had 4 losses. There are plenty of teams that aren't going to have 4 losses as this week's rankings roll in. So it doesn't matter at this point, obviously, because beating them, we all know what that does mean for Notre Dame. So at this point, USC is still in the pantheon of college football, no matter what happens in the rankings. But no, they shouldn't be ranked.
But let's say, and if Barkley's not there, what are they going to do? Most likely, they're going to have to run the ball. Yeah. I mean, here's their rushing stats in those 4 losses: 26 rushing yards against Stanford, 125 against Arizona, 131 against Oregon, 172 was their best rushing performance against UCLA. But they're averaging what? I mean, that's probably 120 yards a game and 3.5 turnovers in their losses.
Right.
Our defensive line's pretty stout. They got a new QB in. If Barkley's out, he's got to run the ball, right?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you think about what the USC quarterback position has been for the past, 15 years? They don't have any guy that goes in there, doesn't have an arm, didn't make a name for himself in high school without being Mr. California football. So the guy that goes in there is going to throw. And maybe it's dangerous. You saw the QB for Stanford, the young guy going in last night and just taking over the game.
Again, that's my point.
I would
rather Barkley play. I honestly would. I mean, no, but I want to see the stats on this backup here. Whittick is their QB for the season. 8 for 9 for 95. I mean, the guy's got 90% pass completion percentage.
Right.
Great.
And you look at his roster stats up there, the guy's 6'4", 235. So if the numbers to be believed, that's a pretty stout guy. So maybe he does have a little bit more of a running threat. But again, when you put a freshman quarterback in for the first time, oh, by the way, it's the visiting Fighting Irishmen who are now #1 in the country, and you have Stephon Tuitt and Prince Shimbo breathing down your neck. Things could get ugly. We'd love to see that.
He's got no meaningful experience. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He had 3 attempts against Hawaii, 2 attempts against Colorado. Both of those games were 35, 40-point blowouts probably when he came in. And then came in with throw 3 passes to save Barkley. Now, also he's got negative 13 yards, which is probably sacks. So maybe the guy takes sacks. I don't know. I think the defense is going to kill this kid.
Yeah, well, I totally agree, and I sure hope so. I mean, but again, not to stray too much from the statistical analysis, I always kind of come with the emotional bent. But when you look at what this game is, what USC has to do is get themselves whipped up into some sort of beehive type of frenzy where, frankly, the only thing that they can accomplish by beating Notre Dame is ruining the party for another rival. And I hate to marginalize their whole season, but I really don't because I don't like them. Well, all they can do at this point, it's a reversal of fortunes that a lot of the people that know what USC has been to Notre Dame in the past 10 years, it's just bizarro world. But all they can do is ruin the party. That's all they can do.
We have the guy that could potentially solidify the Heisman campaign.
Exactly.
We have the opportunity.
We're #1. Yeah, our quarterback's the guy that's looking good. Your quarterback's the guy that's banged up. Your coach is the guy that's a clown. He has a clown nose.
And as just the most remarkable reversal of fortunes, Notre Dame starts the season unranked. USC starts #1.
I know. It's
now we're #1, and they're on the verge. If they're not unranked, damn it, they're going to be after we crush them.
Yeah.
And it's just the pendulum is swung. It's swung back the other way. Thank God, it's a great time to be an Irish fan.
And, yeah, exactly. But and let's take this further. I mean, look at what you have. You have a drop back passer and you have a mobile quarterback. You have this coach who's just. He's a jokester. The guy is an absolute clown. And then you have Brian Kelly, who's solidifying himself as being this great turnaround artist, college football mastermind. So it's a complete detachment. It's a complete flip. And I think the key to this game, I do believe that Notre Dame could beat anybody in the country if they play their best game. But I'm telling you, this is going to be exactly like what Pittsburgh was, which is, does this team have a chip on their shoulder and say, we want to ruin the party? Or if they're ready to lay down and die because they've already got 4 losses, and all these guys are like, man, we went to USC and we thought we were going to crush these fools, and they're all looking at Teo thinking, you made the right decision, I didn't.
Yeah.
If that type of thing happens, which could happen when you have a coach like Kiffin that can't keep everybody together and motivated to say, look, this game still matters to us. I mean, what's that speech like? You're Lane Kiffin, and you're done with your Fruit Loops for the day. What is that pregame speech like to your team?
Whatever it is, it has the yakety sax going on in the background.
Exactly. What do you say to these guys? Oh, hey, well, let's get stats. So try to get yourself into the NFL. I mean, at this point, you need Pete Carroll, and I hate to say that because I didn't like the guy when he was coaching USC, but there's obviously a fall off from him down to Lane Kiffin. I mean, that's the biggest thing for USC is what type of team shows up. Look, Pittsburgh. God love them. Now I look back on that game. That was a team that said, you know what? This is Notre Dame's whatever season, but you know what? We're comfortable playing here, and this is our opponent for the day. And they showed up, and they came to play.
No, it did, and BC.
Wake Forest showed that maybe they were like, okay, we're ready to just kind of put things to bed. And their running back went down. They had some bad breaks, and when you get down by 14 in the first 3 minutes, and it's the #1 team on the road, or the de facto #1 on senior day, teams do that. So I think the story, and I hate to make the story about USC because obviously it's all about Notre Dame, but how do they even decide that they're going to show up? And is it just a cockiness because it's Notre Dame and they all can't stand Notre Dame? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Well, I'm really hoping that they are hanging on to the edge of the cliff by a fingernail, and Notre Dame could be the team to walk by and politely step on their hand.
Yeah, and but I think you can see Notre Dame guys rallying around each other, enjoying the moment of, hey, we know what this game is going to springboard us into. And USC seems like the type of team that you're going to see them start arguing with each other on the sideline and having the inter-team strife going on. So, again, it speaks a lot to what has happened to their program and what they could potentially bring to the table.
Well, I don't know what else there is to say, dude. You would think you're #1. This is the culmination of, 30 plus years of fandom for both of us. Finally getting back. God, we have, I don't even remember how I felt in the '80s at this point, and it's like, I don't even know what to say.
Well, this hasn't happened since I
But
was...
it's not. But the point is it's not done.
No, it's not
You
done.
still got to beat USC,
It's
and
not
then we've
done.
got a ball buster of a national championship game. You know.
And the whole point is that nothing exists beyond the USC game at this point. And this is not a team. Like I said, I don't know how Kiffin's going to do it. However, clearly not a team you can overlook. Clearly not a friendly environment for Notre Dame to go to the Coliseum in California. I think at this point, though, and we've refrained from being very scriptural this year, but I think at this point it's required. My number one, I'm not just happy for Notre Dame's success, because I've always believed if you did things right and you get the RKGs, as Kelly would say, that good things are going to happen. But if anybody that's heard my BCS gripes this year, the thing that I'm most excited about at this point is that Notre Dame has a chance to play themselves into the national championship without the fear of any sort of bias. If you take care of business next week, you're in. They have a chance. The seas have been parted by Moses. All you have to do is walk across, and that's the thing with Notre Dame. There is no... Now, if Notre Dame lost and they were one of 5 one-loss teams, I wouldn't be feeling very good about it because we know the demons that are out there and the haters and stuff, and that's fine. But I'm so excited that this has become what God intended for all of us, which is an environment where you have free will. You have the choice to get it done or not, to do the right thing or the wrong thing. Notre Dame has earned themselves the right to have the free will against USC. Do you want this or not? And if you win this game, there's nothing anybody can do. I mean, I think even statistically, with the weight of the numbers in the BCS, the media could probably stage a coup, and Notre Dame could not be in the national championship.
No, it's, I mean, if
you win this game, and you have a chance, and that's all you could ever hope for.
If they win, if they go on to the title game, I mean, even if they lose, but God, if they win, dude, I can't even imagine. I'll probably die after that. I mean, I've like, hey, if Notre Dame wins it all, my life is virtually completed.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how many just people that are out there have been waiting for it, and have that same kind of sentiment. Like, I feel like there are an awful lot of bucket lists that would be getting checked off. But again, that's all premature at this point. There is business to be taken care of, and make no mistake, despite what we said about the players, it doesn't matter what the injuries are. This is a team that's made up of 4- and 5-star college football players, and it's messy business that needs to get taken care of on Saturday, and that's what it's all about.
No, I'll leave you with this, man.
I feel very, very good about the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not second guessing it, but this is not we'll just go here and get our boarding pass stamped in LA, and all of a sudden we're in the national championship. USC, there might be guys that want to spoil the party, and if that's the case, it could get ugly. But I feel good about it.
Yeah, hopefully they're packing it in by halftime. Man, anybody out there listening, if I called you last night, I have no clue what I said, but I, based on my call log,
broadcast random.
Yeah, was just drunk dialing several people,
random broadcast,
including my wife. My wife this morning was like, I think you called me crying at like 2 a.m.
And she was upstairs, probably in bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you called her from the living room.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I slept, on the floor.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, and I've already cried this morning too. I just overcome with emotion, man. Yeah. My wife's like, you didn't cry when we got married. You didn't cry when any of your kids were born.
Children were born.
You didn't cry when your grandma died. She's never seen me cry.
Well,
ever, and I'm bawling like a little freak.
It's the emotion for all those things that you've bottled up, and this has simply been the catalyst. At least that's the story that you tell her. Hopefully she doesn't listen to the podcast, but
no,
all you have to tell her is, hey, this was a catalyst, honey. I'm crying for all those things, and it's finally time. I'm a man, and I've bottled up my emotions. But yeah, you know what? It has to be said. It's kind of lame, but I just thought. And my wife said to me, are you tweaking? Are you just tweaking right now? And I said, you know what? I'm filled with, and again, it's just like this biblical thing. I am filled with so much joy for everybody that follows this program. I do not feel any sort of animosity to the haters right now. It's just, when you believe that they could have done this, I mean, did I think they could have done this at the beginning of the year? I really didn't. I've been pleasantly surprised.
The funniest thing is, all the other times where I thought they would go undefeated, all the other years where I thought this is the year that weren't, and then you're like, you finally get your guard let down a little bit, and this is the year, it just goes to show.
But how many of those years were built on defense, and that's the craziest thing about this.
It is.
Alabama has done it, LSU has done it, and you know what? Oregon has been doing it with offense for probably 5 years, at least 10 years, and we've seen Texas Tech, We've seen Kansas State. We've seen West Virginia. You've seen teams time and again, Notre Dame in the past, putting up a ton of points, and Notre Dame said, you know what, let's go the road. Less traveled, let's build this thing on defense. And maybe that's why you're like, I can't see it right now in week 3, and now all of a sudden,
because the only teams
number 1.
Because the only teams besides the guys with really good defense, the only other teams that win it all, Cam Newton, Vince Young, you just have to have some stud quarterback, which we don't have right now. I mean, Golson's not a 6'5" guy. He's just not. I mean, so it's like you have to go that route.
Yeah. But again, I mean, when you look at like Cam Newton winning, I mean, Auburn had a pretty good defense that year. I mean, the defense in the national championship is typically
that's true, and I'm not saying.
But I agree. That guy does get Vince Young, Matt Leinart. Those guys transcend and they get you to the next level. I totally agree. But the whole point for me is, I feel so much joy for everybody that just follows this team, all the kids that just believe, and the parents that brainwash, and the guys that live and die with it, the players. We can't say enough about the guys, you know, from our hometown, the Eiferts and the Goodmans and the guy and even guys like Tommy Reese. They just come in and do what they do, and they're happy to be a part of it. And it's such a quintessential Notre Dame thing this year. And I mean, the season is such a success already.
I feel like this is just the start of what could be an insane resurgence / dynasty. I mean, think about all the recruits that just choose schools based on who's number 1. You know, the guys that just like, I hate to say it.
Well, you have 20 letters on the desk. I mean, what do you do? You know, who's number 1? Who's going to win a title?
Well,
who's in the Heisman running?
And think of all the kids that like maybe Notre Dame's battling USC for, who are going to go see. Hopefully, the Trojans get massacred next week.
Right.
Maybe they flip. You know, I just it's hopefully it's the start of something good, and whether.
But, you know, again, like you and I maybe have some youthful memories of the last national championship. I mean, look at these kids now; they're 18 years old. Notre Dame can't bank on 77 and 88 to kids that are 18 years old in this environment, and with all the exposure of college football. So it's high time they're back in. My only thing was, I thought the BCS was a strong enough demon that just leaving things up to fate and saying, you know, everything will work itself out. I thought that was a really dangerous philosophy with something as corrupt as the BCS. Frankly, I still believe that, but this team has become so good that they've been able to make that not a factor, like we talked about with the reffing in the past. You know, you got to be good enough that the refs can't spoil it. And in college football, you got to be good enough that the BCS can't spoil it, and it looks like Notre Dame is. So, yep, you have more faith than I have no problem admitting that. But that was only because I thought BCS was a demon that needed to be exercised, and Notre Dame sure has at this point. This season is clean.
All right, that's about all we got here. We're keeping it under half an hour. Even time we should have the absolute most to say. A lot of it is just best left unsaid.
Everybody knows what there is to be said. There's a little bit of business out on the West Coast, and then things get fun after that.
And then we get to start planning the trip to Miami.
You got it.
All right, later.
See ya.
Miami.